Ann-Margret was the only woman from Elvis Presley's Hollywood life invited to his funeral. She didn't make a scene. She didn't speak to the press. She just showed up with red-rimmed eyes and accepted the gift he left behind. But what fans didn't know was that Elvis had arranged something just for her. A gift so personal, so symbolic, she kept it hidden for 20 years. She never told the public what it said. She never sold it, never even showed it. Until now. It started in 1963, under the bright lights of Viva Las Vegas. Ann-Margret and Elvis Presley were cast opposite each other. Two rising stars, both beautiful, both magnetic, both born to perform. And almost instantly, something happened. Not just chemistry, not just attraction, but something deeper. Ann-Margret would later say that when they met, it was like a mirror. They were the same in all the ways that mattered. They moved the same. They thought the same. They understood the isolation of fame, the pressure to perform, and the toll it takes behind the curtain. And on set, it showed. Their dance scenes sizzled. Their off-screen flirtation was impossible to hide. Even the crew whispered that they weren't acting. This was real. At the time, Elvis was still connected to Priscilla Beaulieu, though not yet married. But that didn't stop the two from falling into a whirlwind romance. They rode motorcycles together. They stayed up all night talking. For once, Elvis was with someone who understood him, not as the king, but as a man. She gave him something rare in his world. Safety, not obsession, not manipulation, not demands, just someone who matched him, talent for talent, wound for wound. He gave her a nickname, Thumper, after the rabbit from Bambi. It was playful, innocent, the kind of name you give someone you actually know. She called him EP, never Elvis, always just EP, because to her he wasn't an icon. He was the man behind the voice. And though the romance didn't last, the affection did. When the film wrapped and the curtain fell on their public story, the private one continued quietly. Letters were exchanged. Gifts were sent. They were never seen together again in public. But neither of them ever truly let go. Ann-Margret moved on. Elvis married Priscilla. But in the quiet places, the handwritten notes, the birthdays remembered, something tender remained. Something real. Something unfinished. And when Elvis died in 1977, it was Ann-Margret. Not the starlet, not the co-star, not the former flame, who received something no one else did. A gift so symbolic, so intimate, that she kept it to herself for 20 years. Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977. And for much of the world, the shock was too great to process. Graceland was flooded with flowers, news cameras, fans, and reporters desperate for details. The world mourned the king. But in the middle of all that chaos, one woman arrived quietly, grieving in her own way. Ann-Margret didn't go for the cameras. She didn't give a statement. She didn't even tell anyone she was coming. But she was there. And for longtime fans, that detail alone was stunning. Why? Because she was the only woman from Elvis's Hollywood life who was personally invited by the Presley family to attend. Not Natalie Wood. Not Ursula Andress. Not even his former co-stars or close celebrity friends. Just her. When she walked into Graceland, people fell silent. Not because she demanded attention, but because they knew. They could feel the weight she carried. Ann-Margret didn't cry loudly. She held herself with dignity. But her red, swollen eyes said everything. She stood near the casket. She placed her hand gently on it. Just once. And then she turned and walked toward something waiting for her. Among the sea of floral arrangements sent to honor Elvis's life, there was one that wasn't for the public. One that wasn't just for show. A massive guitar-shaped funeral wreath, sent to Ann-Margret. No other woman received a personal tribute like that. It stood taller than she did, adorned with white carnations, red roses, and a golden ribbon. The shape wasn't random. It was a message, because in their final days, Elvis had arranged this, just for her. And with it came a note no one saw, a note she never revealed. For years, no one even knew it existed, until whispers started to emerge decades later. And when the truth finally came out, Even Elvis's most devoted fans were stunned, because what Ann-Margret did with that wreath, and what she refused to do, would speak louder than any eulogy. After the funeral, reporters tried to catch Ann-Margret as she left Graceland. They wanted quotes, tears, headlines, but she said nothing. She returned home to California with a heart full of sorrow, and a wreath no one knew about. That giant, guitar-shaped floral tribute, she had it carefully preserved. Not displayed, not photographed, not auctioned off like so many celebrity artifacts. Instead, she had it privately dried, boxed, and stored. For 20 years, no one outside her closest circle knew it existed. She never mentioned it in interviews. She never used it to elevate her public profile or capitalize on Elvis's name. Because to Ann-Margret, it wasn't a gift for the world. It was a final message from Elvis to her. Some say the ribbon bore his initials. Others whisper that a handwritten note had been tucked inside, just for her eyes. She never confirmed it. She never denied it. All she ever said was, "He knew how much I loved him, and I knew how much he loved me." That's all. Decades later, in a rare moment of vulnerability, she briefly mentioned a floral piece she still kept. It was a passing comment, almost too soft to notice. But to fans, it was everything, because it proved what so many suspected, that Elvis's connection to Ann-Margret didn't end on set, didn't fade after Viva Las Vegas, didn't vanish with time. It lasted, in quiet gestures, in hidden mementos, in one woman's choice to keep his memory sacred, away from cameras, away from gossip, away from spectacle. She could have told the world, but she didn't, because some things are too personal, too painful, too precious to share. Until one day she finally did. And that's when the truth about Elvis's final gift came to light. To the outside world, Elvis and Ann-Margret were just co-stars in Viva Las Vegas. Perfect on-screen pairing. Charismatic, flirty, electrifying. But to those who were there, to the people behind the scenes, the truth was much deeper. They weren't just playing lovers. They were falling for each other in real life. Their chemistry was undeniable. Crew members said sparks flew the moment they met. Elvis called her Thumper. She called him EP. They had private jokes, secret glances, and late-night conversations no one else was invited to. For a brief, golden window, they were inseparable. And it terrified the people around him. Because Ann-Margret wasn't just a fling. She was a threat to his public image, to his management, and to the expectations forced on him by Colonel Tom Parker and others who controlled Elvis's every move. He was supposed to marry Priscilla. He wasn't supposed to fall in love with another star, especially not one who matched his fame, his magnetism, and his fire. So it ended, not because they wanted it to, but because the machine around Elvis made sure it had to. Ann-Margret never spoke bitterly about it. She never sold a tell-all book, never revealed the details of their romance. She kept it sacred. She moved on, married someone else. But when Elvis died, all of that came rushing back. And that's why the floral guitar mattered so much. Because for all the years that had passed, for all the silence and distance and time, Elvis still remembered. In his final days, knowing his health was failing and his world had grown dark, he arranged that one gesture. A message in flowers. A tribute not to an image or a rumor, but to her. To the woman who met him as he was, not as the world saw him. To the woman who never betrayed him. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't public. It was quiet, and it said everything. Ann-Margret later said that she and Elvis had a bond that no one could break. Not even time. Not even death. So when the gift arrived, the wreath shaped like the instrument that had defined his life, it wasn't just a symbol. It was a goodbye. A thank you. A whispered memory from a man who rarely got to say what he felt. And for Ann-Margret, it meant more than any headline ever could. She didn't need to talk about it. She didn't need to explain. She just kept it. Until the day came when she couldn't keep it hidden anymore. For 2 decades, Ann-Margret said nothing about the floral guitar Elvis sent. It stayed boxed away, her private grief tucked neatly behind a graceful smile. But time has a way of softening even the most guarded hearts. In the early 2000s, During a quiet conversation with a journalist who had long admired her career, Ann-Margret let her composure slip, just slightly. She was asked if she still thought of Elvis. She didn't hesitate. "All the time," she said. Then, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned the floral piece he had sent. It was the first time she had acknowledged it publicly. There was no dramatic reveal, no photos, no auction or museum donation, just a few words. But those words cracked open a secret fans had never known. That even after all those years, even after marriages, movies, fame, and silence, she still kept the last thing Elvis gave her. That moment sparked a quiet wave of awe among fans and music historians. People who had spent years dissecting every detail of Elvis's life were suddenly confronted with a new kind of truth. One that wasn't in biographies or documentaries. This wasn't about spectacle. This was about love. Private, protected, profound. When asked later why she never spoke about it before, Ann-Margret said only, "I don't talk about the people I love." It was that simple. She hadn't kept the wreath to prove anything. She hadn't hidden it out of guilt. She kept it because it was sacred. Because some memories aren't for the spotlight. They're for the soul. And when she finally did let the world glimpse it, even just in passing, it wasn't for attention. It was for healing. For her. And maybe for Elvis too. By then, she was older, wiser, a little more ready to let go. But never forget. And fans, especially those who had worshipped Elvis for decades, were moved to tears. Because this wasn't the Elvis of tabloids or jumpsuits or Vegas lights. This was Elvis the man. And Ann-Margret, the one who loved him enough to say nothing for 20 years. In that moment, everything changed. The legend deepened. And the love story that fans had only guessed at finally became real. Elvis Presley and Ann-Margret were two of the brightest stars of their generation. Icons in their own right. But behind the glitter, the concerts, and the fame, there was something softer, something real. They shared more than a screen, more than a romance. They shared a connection. Rare, profound, and deeply human. And in the end, it wasn't a grand speech or a song that revealed it. It was a single gift. One final gesture, shaped like a guitar, left in silence, and kept in secret for 20 years. Because some stories don't need to be shouted. They only need to be remembered. Ann-Margret remembered. And now, so do we. For more emotional stories, check out this video.